Okay. Hello. Hello, fellas. Good to see you. And, we're back. It's another week. I figured I might as well try and do these weekly. It's a good time. I actually enjoy doing these. Today, I wanted to talk about the Great Old One for Warlock. We're kind of, well, there's not really consistency. It's sort of just what I'm in the mood to talk about, I suppose. And today I feel like talking about Great Old One Warlock. This was actually a subclass that piqued my interest quite a bit whenever the 2024 Player's Handbook came out, and one that I sort of hold dear to my heart. I played a Great Old One Warlock back in 2014 for a long time, so I feel like maybe I've got a bit more insight on this than, say, last week's Assassin Rogue. I do feel like I'm excited to really look into this. I've thought about it a lot, and I remember I was originally going to make a video. I scripted a video for Great Old One before, but I sort of dashed that to the side. But yeah, let's just go ahead and hop right into it. Great Old One, I think, is really cool. I think thematically it's really cool. I feel like a lot of games, as they've sort of tended more towards the narrative aspects of Dungeons and Dragons, I do feel like a lot of warlocks end up having much tighter connections with their patron, as that is kind of what makes warlock special, thematically, is that their magic does not come from the direct study of the weave and the arcane. It does not come from within. It doesn't come from a god. It's from some sort of outer being that has a pact created, right? Which generally means some sort of interaction. But I think Great Old One is very neat because it sort of doesn't do that. It's this an elder god or something like that, or something very much hidden away from reality. Take, for example, Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth, or, Hastur, something like that. I think it does open up for some very interesting character ideas. It makes you think of, I guess more at the extreme end of it, but like something like a Malkavian from Vampire the Masquerade, right? Someone who has this eldritch knowledge and maybe isn't completely in touch with normal reality as we perceive it, but that's kind of getting off track. I think that one of the main, well, not a main thing, but something I will talk about is sort of Warlock in general as it's transition to 2024, because it's a very interesting subclass, right? Warlock has always been the odd caster out, as it is a short rest based caster. It focuses more on being able to dish out big spells after small rests, and to compensate for that, they kind of turn into a bit of a cantrip bot. In 2014, it was very much Eldritch Blast bot. But there's a couple of things that sort of change that around. But yeah, warlocks are strange. Warlocks are definitely very strange, and I guess one of the main things that I would like to look for with this subclass is sort of, how does it combat that? What options does it offer to you that, and similar to, like, does it fortify the base class of the warlock or introduce something new? So, yeah, I think that, let's just start. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath today. So, level 3, we get Awakened Mind, which is an interesting one, because in 2024, you can form a telepathic connection between your mind and the mind of another. As a bonus action, choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. You and the chosen creature can communicate telepathically with each other while the two of you are within a number of miles of each other equal to your charisma modifier. To understand each other, you must mentally use a language the other knows. Telepathic connection lasts for a number of minutes equal to your warlock level. It ends early if you use this feature to connect with a different creature. Telepathy is one of those things that it's always nice to have, right? But what's interesting about this form of telepathy is that it is very different than what it was before. This form of telepathy is very much the sort of infiltration type of telepathy that you would use with your allies. You must share a language is a big one. Being able to communicate in Common or Elvish or something like that. You have to be able to share the language with another. I do think that the durate or the distance here being equal to your charisma modifier, I think if anything scaled off the charisma modifier, that's definitely a strange one. Especially because to establish it, it must be a creature you can see. And it lasts a number of minutes equal to your Warlock level. I'm just not really sure how often that would come up outside of, planar not even planar transportation, but across great distances. Most cities are not going to be that big that you will end up being that many miles away, but that's kind of just a nitpick. I mean, this is something really nice, and sort of like I talked with in the Assassin video, this is sort of the flavor of the Great Old One. But at the same time, I think what they've done is they've homogenized telepathy. Because in 2014, how it worked was any creature within 30 feet of you, you could communicate to, and they could understand you. It turned it from this sort of subterfuge, undercover infiltration sort of ability into a face ability. Because you could also say cast comprehend languages, and then you could communicate with anything. And honestly, I can't say I'm a huge fan of it. I think that homogenizing telepathy in this way and sort of taking away that aspect from the Warlock is something I'm not a huge fan of. But, I mean, all of that said, it's not like this is egregious, right? I still think it's very good for, if you need to communicate with a person who is scouting ahead, maybe you're playing a chain lock and you want to communicate past that 100 feet or something like that. Awakened Mind can be used in a lot of ways that I think can be very useful. I think it's a very nice subclass ability to get. Mostly because it's not the only one you get. At level 3, you also get your spells. So you get Detect Thoughts, you get Dissonant Whispers, you get Phantasmal Force, and you get Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I guess we'll talk about Tasha's and Dissonant Whispers first. They're both very good spells. I think Tasha's Hideous Laughter is, I don't want to say underrated, because I don't see a lot of people talk about it, but I do think Tasha's is a very good first, level spell. And with how Warlocks work, with their spells constantly being upcast, they do have it so that you can target additional creatures. So by the time you get this, you're casting second level spells. So your Tasha's will always hit 2 creatures. It does give them prone and incapacitated, and they can keep saving against it, but it is a pretty strong ability to have, in my opinion. I do think that, not ability, spell. I think it's a very strong spell to have. I think that it'll probably get outshined later down the line by other spells, things like a slow or, Hunger of Hadar or Black Tentacles and things like that, but it's very useful for those early levels, I think. Dissonant Whispers is also a decent little chunk of damage, but I think this will be the one you use less. It's a bit more situational than crowd controlling someone to have them move away, and it doesn't upcast very well. So I don't think that Dissonant Whispers is too high up there on the radar. Detect Thoughts and Phantasmal Force are both very interesting. Detect Thoughts is, I feel like it very much depends on your DM, as with most enchantment spells. But Detect Thoughts can be very interesting. It's a good way to learn information, and if your DM is very privy to sharing that information with you, it does come with risks, of course, of delving deeper and being caught and things like that, but it's very nice. I use it a lot. I'm actually a very big fan of Detect Thoughts. I think it's a great way to, both as a DM and as a player, to gain more information and more insight. It lets you play, if you know you have someone with Detect Thoughts, you can have your villains play their cards close to their chest, but still be able to share things with your party, right? I think that's very neat. And then Phantasmal Force is an interesting spell. I feel like Phantasmal Force is very much one of those things that it's difficult. I feel like I'm sorry, it's like completely cut off for you guys. But I do feel like Phantasmal Force kind of does end up being sort of a problematic spell at a lot of places. They have sort of changed it. You can basically, it's a save or suck spell. At the end of the day, that's what it is. A save or suck to basically take something out of the fight, right? And at this point, you do have things. I mean, you already have like Hold Person, you have Hideous Laughter, so I do think that something like Phantasmal Force is maybe a little redundant. It's an illusion spell, but you know, Tasha's is an enchantment spell, which will be important for later. At level 5, you get Clairvoyance and Hunger of Hadar. Clairvoyance is nice if you don't really want to use it familiar, or if you feel like your familiar can't get into somewhere. Clairvoyance is very good for scouting. I do like Clairvoyance. I think that it can be very, very helpful in a lot of situations. And then Hunger of Hadar is just a very good area of effect spell. Blinding creatures, no light is in there, difficult terrain, dealing damage. It kind of does a lot, and it's a very large area. It's a 20-foot radius. So if you have something like Devil's Sight, it does combo with this very well. You can sort of just pick off any creature that may be inside of the Hunger of Hadar. Confusion's an interesting spell. At level 7, you get Confusion, which I think is an interesting spell. It's very inconsistent, in my opinion. It's strong in the sense that... Oh, I'm sorry. Why was that so loud? It's strong in the sense that, you know, it kind of incapacitates your opponents. They can't take bonus actions or reactions, but there's also definitely a lot of chances that it could just not work, right? Well, I guess a 20% chance, but it would feel bad to use Confusion and then they simply ignore your spell. I think that there's more consistent options. And then Summon Aberration. I mean, it's a summon spell. It's pretty good. It's a concentration spell, which is something worth noting. And what you're kind of shaping up with this Warlock is a lot of competing concentration options. As you can see, you know, you already have Hunger of Hadar, Confusion, and Summon Aberration right here. You know, Phantasmal Forest, Tasha's. A lot of these are concentration, so there's many great options for concentration. And Summon Aberration if you want to deal some extra damage or need to get an extra body on the field with its additional little effects. It's not a bad choice. And then lastly, your 5th level spells at level 9, you get Modify Memory. Fun spell. Can really get you out of a pickle. I'm a big Modify Memory enjoyer. I have a lot of fun using it. I think one of the unfortunate things is that a Warlock will never be able to cast it past 5th level, right? So Modify Memory, you can kind of see that, you know, if you cast at 6th level, it's up to 7 days ago. You will never be able to do that. Unfortunately, you'll only ever be able to go up to a day ago. So it does kind of lose a bit of its luster. And then Telekinesis is, you know, yet another control spell that you concentrate on. I do think Telekinesis is good. Being able to restrain and throw things around and block paths against foes is very nice. I do like Telekinesis, but I think that it's maybe just a little... it's just competing with so many other options, not to mention what's on the base Warlock spell list, so... and you'll see later that there's even more competition. But yeah, at level 3, you also get Psychic spells. So whenever you cast a Warlock spell that deals damage, you can change its damage type to Psychic damage. In addition, when you cast a Warlock spell that is an enchantment or illusion, you can do so without verbal or somatic components. Psychic is very rarely resisted. I think that Psychic is more often than not something that will be dealing full damage, or something is immune to it. So being able to kind of have the option to turn any of your spells into psychic damage and bypass immunities is very strong, in my opinion. I think it's also very flavorful. I think it's pretty cool that you can sort of change the way that your spells look and how they act to sort of build around this mental image of something that is able to use spells in a way that mires the mind as opposed to, you know, inflicting physical damage. It's pretty strong. I think it's kind of strong to be able to just change a lot of your damage types to psychic, right? You know, if you use something like a does Warlock get True Strike? I feel like I should know this. I'm sorry. But, you know, you use things like Green Flame Blade. You turn that into psychic. You use, you know, so many different spells that you'll be using. If you're using Eldritch Blast, I already get force damage, which is pretty good. But it kind of opens up more options, and I think it's really cool. I do like it. In addition, you can cast enchantment or illusion spells without verbal or somatic components, which is pretty strong. You can cast, say, like Modify Memory with no verbal or somatic components, so you will not be detected as you cast it. You can cast things like Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's, and kind of what makes this really good is you can cast things like Hold Person, Hold Monster, without risk of being counterspelled. I think that is a very scary thing that kind of happens later in the game, is being counterspelled or having your spells be interrupted in some way. So being able to do so without really the worry of that is very good, in my opinion. It's useful in combat. It's useful in social situations. And you can cast something like a Suggestion or Command, right? Since it's an enchantment spell, and no one would really know. You can kind of, you really can just become a master of social situations without other people knowing. I think it's pretty impressive. I think that this is a very good ability that is sort of gated by how many spells the Warlock gets. You cannot consistently do this multiple times in a row, right? You can cast like Enthrall without any verbal or somatic components. It's very good. I'm a fan of it. I do like it quite a lot. Goodness, I'm sorry. I feel like I've been yapping so much. Goodness gracious. It's okay. We'll move on to level 6. Clairvoyant combatant. When you form a telepathic bond with a creature using your awakened mind, you can force that creature to make a wisdom saving throw against their spell of safety. See, on a failed save, the creature has disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature for the duration of the bond. And once you use this feature, you cannot use it again until you finish a short or long rest, unless you expend a packed magic spell slot. This is a very good ability if you're fighting one creature, I feel. It is a bonus action. It does compete with Hex to be able to put that up, but it does not take concentration, which is very good. I actually do feel like this is really, really strong on blade locks. If you're playing a melee Warlock and you are, say, fighting a big monster, just like a single big monster, or you kind of have the aggro of the big monster, this is very strong. Basically forcing them to have disadvantage against you and you having advantage on all of your attacks is really good. It's hard to really, I don't know. I feel like you don't really need a ton of words to know how good that is. It does have a short range, 30 feet. You have to use your Awakened Mind feature, which is kind of interesting, as it now turns Awakened Mind into something that you'd only use for infiltration with your allies, into something you'll be using on your enemies, while also forcing them to make a wisdom saving throw. Yeah, I think that I am very much a fan of this. I think it's very strong. And to get this as early as level 6 turns you into a very, very potent, like, Eldritch Blaster, or a very potent melee Warlock. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much else to say about it. It's just a very good ability. It is a wisdom save, and creatures do generally have higher wisdom saves, but not quite as high as, like, a constitution save. So sometimes it'll hit, sometimes it won't. But if you get like a Rod of the Pact Keeper, it'll make this really nice. It does use your spell save DC, of course. This is probably one of those things that, you know, if you're not throwing Hex out every combat, which, you know, we'll get to that later, then it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's one of those things that you can probably use every combat and, you know, within a short rest and get away with it. And even being able to get it back with the usage of a spell slot, if you're consistently fighting just one creature over and over, it's honestly, in my opinion, worth a spell slot to just get advantage on all your attack rolls and dissuade the enemy from hitting you. Alright. Level 10. Eldritch Hex. This one's interesting. Your alien patron grants you a powerful curse. You always have the Hex spell prepared, and when you cast Hex and choose an ability, the target also has a disadvantage on saving throws of the chosen ability for the duration of the spell. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, where if you Hex something and you say choose Wisdom saving throws, they have disadvantage against your Clairvoyant combatant. And this actually works really, really well. The more you think about it, the more useful it is, right? If you say have a wizard or a sorcerer in your party who does a lot of AoE spells, you can Hex them and give them disadvantage on dexterity saves. And then all of a sudden, they're probably going to be getting hit by full damage for a lot of those. If you have, say, a battle master or a barbarian that wants to be doing a lot of grappling or knocking prone, you know, using things like not weapon masteries, pardon, you know, especially battle master does force a lot of strength saving throws. You can even choose strength and help your battle master shine. If you have a wizard who focuses on enchantment magic, you can choose wisdom saving throws and allow them to hit their save or suck spells much easier. It even helps you in that maybe one turn you want to cast Hex and give them disadvantage on a wisdom save. Next turn you can use Clairvoyant combatant, have them have disadvantage on that, but then you could even use a different spell and they will have disadvantage against the saving throw for that other spell. So not only does it combo into itself, it's something that is situationally very, very useful for the rest of your party. That you can choose to... It's also very versatile, right? You can choose maybe Constitution saving throws because hey, maybe you have an assassin rogue that wants to do a lot of poison strikes. You can choose so many options, and I think that it's really awesome. I think it's nice because Hex is one of those spells that once you get up to this level, it's hard to really justify using Hex, right? I think that it becomes very difficult to justify the usage of Hex. And this kind of just lets it keep scaling and keep being useful throughout the campaign. It's kind of nice. It does compete, again, with a lot of other concentration options. Great Old One does have a lot of issues with concentration. There is many times that it's hard to choose the best spell in the moment. Sorry, I had to take a sip of water. But yeah, it lets Hex sort of scale with you, which is something that I've always wanted from Warlock. And then level 10 is Thought Shield. Your thoughts can't be read by telepathy or other means unless you allow it. You get resistance to psychic damage, and whenever a creature deals psychic damage to you, that creature takes the same amount of damage that you take. Cool. I don't know. It is cool. It is cool. This actually used to be the only level 10 ability you got on Great Old One. But it's very good. I think that telepathy is one of those things that doesn't come up a ton. I mean, if you're going against Mind Flayers, it's kind of useful, but very often I feel like you don't encounter telepathy in enemies. So like the one time you do, being able to sort of flex that muscle of what you are, this sort of aberrant being, is very neat, in my opinion. Resistance to psychic damage is also one of those things where, like, really you're not going to run into a lot of psychic damage, but when you do, it will feel really cool to be able to resist it. And not only resist it, but be able to dish that damage back. I am a bit of a fan of that. I think that is neat. Yeah, this is sort of just a nice ribbon feature that gives you defenses. And lastly is level 14, create thrall. I have some gripes about this one, because you'll see it is very different from 2014. Whenever you cast Summon Aberration, you can modify it so that it doesn't require concentration. If you do so, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting, and when summoned, the aberration has a number of temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. In addition, the first time each turn the aberration hits a creature under the effect of your hex, the aberration deals extra psychic damage to target equal to the bonus damage of that spell. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. But the first thing I want to mention is that this is definitely a step in the direction of Wizards of the Coast, of wanting to make things strong for combat and not necessarily giving them interesting, flavorful options outside of combat. The old 2014 one basically lets you perma-charm a creature and lets you communicate with it across any distance. I'd have to check if it's extra planar or not, but it was kind of an interesting capstone. It was one you could use on your allies. It was one you could even use on enemies. You know, if there's like a big bad, you can kind of turn them into your thrall. But it didn't get a ton of use, I assume, because now we are here at the point of Create Thrall. In 2024, allowing you to use Summon Aberration, which is just a spell. It simply gives you a casting of a spell, and not even a free casting. You do still have to use the spell slot to summon the aberration. The next thing I do want to talk about is what I truly wish was a optional rule. I think that being able to modify a spell with a longer duration, such as Hunter's Mark or Hex, so that it lasts shorter but doesn't require concentration, I am very much a fan of that. I think that is such a cool thing to do. Summon Aberration is normally an hour, but if you choose to not concentrate on it, it only lasts a minute, so it's only going to be useful for the one combat. I do really wish that was a thing with Hunter's Mark. I wish it was a thing with Hunter's Mark and Hex. I think that it's really cool to be able to augment your spells like that, and to be able to sacrifice longevity for power. Other than that, I don't really have a ton to say about this ability. I think that it's kind of boring. I think it's very strong. I do think that you cannot deny how strong it is, especially if you, like, hex a creature on turn 1, and then you use Summon Aberration at the same time. Well, I guess you can't do that, because it's 2 spells. Okay, we'll say Clairvoyant, Combatant, and Summon Aberration on the same turn. You're basically just throwing out an extra fella, right? One that you can't, like, lose concentration on. It is objectively very strong, but I kind of do wish that it was a bit more flavorful. I don't think Great Old One is necessarily a summoner, and I think that it kind of forces you to use this Summon Aberration spell, which if you're building a character that doesn't really want to use it, then it sort of feels bad to kind of be shoehorned into, you will be using Summon Aberration. This is your capstone. So it's one of those things I'm sort of flip-floppy on, where, well, I guess it's not even flip-flop. I don't go back and forth. It's more that I recognize this is very strong, but I do it sort of makes me a little sad about the direction that Wizards of the Coast is going, is away from the flavor and sort of more into what is strong, something that is powerful at the table. Oh, sorry. A little congested. But yeah, that's actually all of their abilities. And I think that, I don't know, I think overall, Great Old One, I think it's a really strong subclass. I think it doesn't, it's strange because it does add a lot. It definitely turns the Warlock into, not turns into, because the Warlocks are always sort of scheming, right? I feel like Warlocks are always sort of leaning towards the face of the party and being the ones who have the deception and the persuasion and things like that. And it definitely supplements a lot of your ability to do that with things like, you know, subtle spell casting, command, or suggestion. So it definitely adds on in that regard. It also is leaned more towards a controller, with things such as, you know, Eldritch Hex, but it also simply makes your combat stronger with Clairvoyant Combatant. It sort of just does a lot of things that Warlock already does and augments them to be a lot stronger. I do think Great Old One is one of the strongest new subclasses to come out. I think it's really incredible. And it does a lot of things that make playing a Warlock more fun, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's about it. My acid reflux is starting to act up. So I think maybe now would be a good time to call it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. I'm sorry if I sort of went off on a couple tangents and things like that, but no, I think that if you haven't given Great Old One a try, you definitely should. At least in 2014, it was incredibly fun, and it looks like it would be incredibly fun in 2024. So if you have played it, I guess let me know down below how it was. And if you haven't played it, maybe pitch me a character idea. I'd love that. If you enjoyed, make sure to like. I don't know, I have to do all the YouTube stuff. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next week. Thank you. See you guys later. Bye.